I stood by the door with my suitcase, waiting for Daniel to look up. Really look at me. I told him I'd be gone just 3 days. A quick business trip, nothing out of the ordinary. He muttered something like, "Have a good trip," and gave me a kiss so quick I barely felt it. No questions about where I was staying, no reminder to text him when I landed. Just indifference. And I tried to brush it off. I really did. But as I closed the door behind me, a weird heaviness settled in my chest. Like something wasn't right, and hadn't been for a while. It's strange, you know? There was a time when goodbyes felt different. He used to walk me to the car, squeeze my hand like he meant it, slip little notes into my bag. "In case you miss me," he'd say with a grin. But this time, it was like I was just leaving, like I was another chore on his to-do list. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe he was just tired or distracted. But the truth is, when someone stops showing up in the small ways, it's usually because they're showing up somewhere else. Still, I held on to hope, that maybe the distance I felt was just in my head. I told the cab driver the address to the airport and sat back, watching our house disappear in the rearview mirror. I told myself to focus on the meetings ahead, the presentation, the hotel. But deep down, there was this quiet voice whispering that I wasn't the only one saying goodbye that morning. The cab smelled faintly of coffee and lemon-scented air freshener, but even that couldn't distract me from the pit in my stomach. I scrolled through my emails, tried replying to one or two, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to that kiss, or the lack of it. There's something soul-crushing about realizing the person you share your life with doesn't even look up when you walk out the door. I should have felt excited about the trip, maybe even a little relief from the day-to-day. Instead, I just felt invisible. I stared out the window at the passing streets, places we used to go together. The coffee shop we found by accident, the bookstore we got lost in one rainy afternoon. Little pieces of our story, now just landmarks in a city that suddenly felt foreign. I don't know when we stopped laughing like we used to, when our hands stopped finding each other on the couch, when silence became more common than conversation. But that morning, it hit me. I was holding on to memories that meant more to me than they did to him. And still, I kept giving him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was stress. Maybe he'd snap out of it. People go through phases, right? We all get a little distant sometimes. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining everything. There's a different kind of quiet when love starts slipping away. Not loud, not cruel, just cold. And as the airport came into view, I told myself I'd let it go. I'd focus on work. I'd let him be. But that voice, the one whispering something was wrong, it didn't go away. It only got louder. At the airport, everything felt rushed and impersonal. People moving with purpose, announcements echoing overhead, luggage wheels humming against tile floors. I checked in, went through security, found my gate. It was all automatic. But inside, I felt like I was watching my own life from the outside. I kept replaying that goodbye over and over. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. Because it felt like I was the only one who still cared enough to make it meaningful. I sat near the window, watching planes take off, wondering when exactly we started living like strangers. I used to know Daniel like the back of my hand. His habits, his tells, the way he'd touch my back gently in crowded places to let me know he was there. Now I didn't even know what he was thinking, or if he was thinking about me at all. It's a lonely thing, loving someone who's no longer paying attention, like whispering into a void and pretending it's a conversation. Still, I told myself to breathe, to stop spiraling. I pulled out a book I wasn't really reading and waited for boarding to start. One last glance at my phone. No message from him. Not even a "let me know when you land." I didn't know it yet, but that silence was its own kind of message. I boarded the cab that morning with trust. He walked back into the house with secrets. I should have known something was off when the gate agent wouldn't stop typing. She kept glancing at the monitor like it might change its mind. First, it was a delay. Weather issues, they said. Then another. And then, the announcement? Flight canceled. Please visit the customer service desk for rebooking. Just like that, the whole trip vanished into thin air. People around me groaned. Some cursed under their breath. Others rushed to the line. Me? I just stood there, frozen, holding my boarding pass like it meant something now. I took a breath and checked the airline app. The next available flight was the following day. No miracle solution, no secret flight tucked away on a different airline. I'd have to go home. And for a second I hesitated. Not because it wasn't logical. It was. But because deep down, the idea of walking back into that house felt off. Still, I shook the thought away. It's my home too. And besides, Daniel would probably be glad to see me. Maybe this unexpected return could be a small reset, a chance to reconnect. So I pulled out my phone and typed out a message. Simple, casual, the kind of text you send when you think everything's normal. Flight canceled, heading back, be home soon. I added the heart out of habit, the way you might water a plant that hasn't bloomed in months. Then I grabbed my suitcase, walked toward the exit, and waited for his reply. None came. The cab ride home felt different this time. Not rushed, not routine, just quiet. I watched the city blur past the window, the same streets I had left behind just a few hours ago. But now, everything felt heavier, like I was heading toward something I couldn't name yet. I glanced at my phone again. Still no response from Daniel. Not a thumbs up, not an okay. Nothing. I told myself he was probably in a meeting or maybe on a call, but even those excuses felt paper thin. He always replied. Eventually. I rested my head against the window, the glass cool against my skin. The truth was, I wasn't just disappointed by the canceled flight, I was disappointed by the silence. I kept hoping for that little buzz from my phone, the one that would say, "Can't wait to see you," or even, "That was fast." But it never came. And the longer I waited, the more that silence started to sound like an answer I didn't want to hear, like a warning dressed up as coincidence. By the time we pulled into our neighborhood, the sky was a soft, pale gray. That kind of weather that makes everything look still. My heart was doing that weird thing, fast and heavy at the same time. I told myself to stop overthinking, to just go home, change clothes, maybe surprise him with takeout. But part of me, the part I kept trying to ignore, was already bracing for something I couldn't explain yet, only feel. I reached our street, and something immediately felt wrong. It wasn't the kind of thing you could point at. The house was exactly where it always was, the porch light still out, the curtains drawn. But my gut clenched anyway. Maybe it was the car parked 2 spaces down, one I didn't recognize. Or maybe it was the way the house looked too still, like it was holding its breath. I grabbed my suitcase from the trunk and thanked the driver, telling myself to stop making up stories in my head. But I couldn't shake it. I walked slowly toward the door, hoping, to hear the lock click open from the inside. But no one came. I pulled out my key, slipped it in, and pushed the door open. The air inside was warm, familiar, but something was off. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the eerie kind. No TV, no footsteps, no, "Hey, what are you doing back?" Just silence. I called out once, softly. No answer. My heart picked up. Maybe he was in the shower, or on a call with headphones in. But I already knew those weren't the answers. I set my bag down by the door, slipped off my shoes, and pulled out my phone one last time. Still no reply. That message just sat there, unread. And that's when the truth started to take shape in the back of my mind, slow and sharp like a splinter. He wasn't too busy. He wasn't asleep. He was busy with something, or someone, else. I hadn't come home early. I had walked in on the lie unfolding. I took one step further into the hallway, and that's when I heard it. Not loud, not shouting or anything that would have given it away. Just laughter. Soft, easy, intimate. A sound that used to belong to us. Then came music, low and familiar, the kind we'd play on cozy Friday nights with a glass of wine, and nothing to do but enjoy each other's company. Except tonight, I wasn't supposed to be here. And I wasn't the one he was laughing with. My hands were cold, even though the house was warm. I walked carefully, like I was tiptoeing through glass. Each step closer to the living room made my heart pound harder. It was like my body already knew what my mind wasn't ready to admit. I rounded the corner, and there they were. Daniel, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, and next to him, a woman I'd never seen before, curled into his side like she belonged there. 2 wine glasses on the table. One of them was my favorite. He didn't see me at first. I just stood there, watching, numb. They were mid-laugh, hers a little too loud, his a little too smooth. And then his eyes met mine. Everything in his face changed. His color drained. The glass slipped from his hand and thudded against the rug. But I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, silence was the loudest scream I'd ever delivered. He stammered something. My name, maybe, or a half-formed excuse. I didn't really hear it. Everything around me felt like it had slowed to a crawl. I could see the flicker of panic in his eyes, the way his hand shook as he reached for the wine glass, like that gesture could somehow reset the scene. The woman beside him gasped, clutching the blanket tighter around her shoulders, trying to make herself small. She didn't know who I was. That much was clear. But Daniel did, and he knew exactly what this moment meant. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I just stood there, still, quiet, grounded in something deeper than rage. Disappointment, the kind that doesn't show up with fireworks, the kind that settles in your bones like winter. He got up, stammering again, trying to explain the unexplainable. I didn't move, just took it all in. The wine stain on the cushion, the half-eaten charcuterie board on our coffee table, her coat draped over the chair where I usually sat. It wasn't just a fling. This was comfort, familiarity, routine, and that hurt more than anything else. Because it meant this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment mistake. It was planned, lived in, welcomed. He hadn't just replaced me. He'd made space for someone else in the world we built together. And even as the woman stood to leave, fumbling with her purse and muttering apologies to no one in particular, I stayed silent. Not because I didn't have words, but because I refused to give them air. She hurried past me without making eye contact, her perfume leaving a trail that didn't belong in my home. I heard the front door click shut behind her, but I didn't turn. I kept my eyes on Daniel, who suddenly looked smaller, like a man caught in a story he couldn't rewrite fast enough. Mira, I didn't think, he started, voice cracking like a teenager caught sneaking in. But I held up my hand, not to silence him, just to say I'd had enough. Of the lies, of the pretending, of the trying. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that doesn't scream. It just settles, like dust in a room you stopped cleaning. And in that moment, I could feel years of effort collapsing all at once. Every compromise I'd made, every overlooked red flag, every moment I chose to believe in him more than in my own instincts. It all came rushing back in a single breath, but I didn't let it break me. I stood there, head high, heart shattered, but intact. I didn't fall apart. Not yet. He moved toward me, like he might reach out, might beg, might try to stitch something together out of the pieces. But I stepped back, picked up my suitcase without a word. I wasn't ready to leave, not yet. But I wanted him to know something had changed. And from the look on his face, he did. Whatever comfort he'd wrapped himself in was gone. What was left was me. Quiet, awake, and done pretending. I placed my suitcase gently on the floor, the sound soft but final. Daniel stood there like a statue, caught between fear and disbelief. "Didn't expect me this soon, did you?" I said, not coldly, not with venom, just matter of fact. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. I could practically see the gears turning, scrambling for the right excuse, the perfect lie to bandage the mess. But nothing came out. Because what do you say to someone who caught you mid-betrayal with no place left to hide? The air between us was electric with tension, but I didn't flinch. I walked over to the counter, pulled out my phone, and scrolled without urgency. His eyes followed every move I made, like a man watching a storm that hadn't started yet. Then I tapped a button and let the voice memo play. My message, clear and calm. Flight canceled. Heading home now. I watched him wince at the words, the way someone might flinch at hearing their own name in a courtroom. That wasn't just proof I tried. It was proof he chose not to care. He blinked rapidly, trying to speak, to step forward, to fill the air with something. Regret, apology, explanation. But I stayed still. I didn't owe him comfort. Not anymore. Not after what I saw. Not after what I felt. And in that moment, the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was earned. He had built it with every lie, every empty goodbye, every ignored message. And now I was standing inside it, calm, steady, and no longer afraid. He kept reaching for words like they might save him. "It's not what it looks like," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I almost laughed, not out of humor, but because of how predictable that line was. After everything, that's what he came up with? I turned to him then, fully, and just looked. I wanted him to see my face. To really see it. Not the version of me he thought he could fool, or the one he took for granted. The real one. The woman who was done being made small. The woman in our living room. She wasn't the worst part. She was just a symptom. The worst part was how effortlessly he betrayed me. How easy it was for him to switch off the part of his heart that once promised to love me. And maybe deep down, I already knew something had been unraveling. But knowing and seeing are two different beasts. Seeing it? That made it real. Irrevocable. And strangely, freeing. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to ask why. Because the moment you have to beg someone to explain their loyalty, it's already gone. So instead, I just picked up my purse and turned toward the door. No dramatics, no final blow, just presence. That was enough. I felt his panic rise behind me, the kind that comes when a man realizes the woman he thought would always stay just stopped needing him to. As I opened the door, the air outside felt sharper, like it had been waiting for me. I didn't look back, not because I didn't care, but because I finally cared more about myself. I could hear him behind me, his voice stumbling over apologies, trying to gather the pieces as if it wasn't too late. But it was. What he broke wasn't just trust. It was the version of me that would have stayed, reasoned, forgiven. That Mira didn't live here anymore. I walked down the steps slowly, deliberately, as if each one was helping me shed the weight of everything I had carried for too long. No more second-guessing, no more self-doubt. I wasn't rushing out in tears. I was walking out awake. I didn't need to slam the door or scream to leave a mark. The silence I left behind would echo longer than any outburst ever could. And he knew it. He absolutely knew it. I reached my car, slipped inside, and sat for a moment in stillness. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes tired but clear. Then I started the engine, pulled out of the driveway, and let the quiet be my answer. I hadn't come back to fight. I had come back to wake up. And now that I was fully awake, I had only one thing left to do: keep driving. The divorce papers were signed 2 weeks later. No drawn-out fights, no courtroom drama, just signatures and silence. I didn't even need to look him in the eye again. I moved out the next day, and with every box I carried, I felt lighter. Like I was reclaiming parts of myself I didn't even realize he'd been slowly erasing. I found a small apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every corner, every chipped mug, every late-night meal on the floor. Mine. And when I was ready, I told the story. Not for pity, not for revenge. Just truth. I posted a single sentence with a picture of my suitcase by the door. Funny thing about canceled flights. Sometimes they take you exactly where you need to go. I didn't tag him. I didn't have to. The story spread like wildfire. Friends messaged, women I barely knew commented, coworkers I hadn't heard from in years reached out with tears and cheers. Not because they loved the drama, but because they saw themselves in it. Daniel didn't say a word publicly. But I heard through mutual friends that he was devastated, that he kept replaying that night, wondering what he could have said to undo it. But that's the thing about betrayal. Once it's done, there's no unbreaking what's already shattered. He gambled everything for a secret weekend. I cashed it in for a lifetime of clarity. And honestly, it was the best deal I never asked for. It's strange how quickly peace returns when you stop chasing the wrong person's love. My mornings started to feel quieter, but not empty. Just calm. I'd wake up to sunlight spilling through my new bedroom window, make coffee exactly how I like it. No compromises, no his and hers. I started reading again, cooking meals without worrying if someone would complain about too much garlic. I remembered what it felt like to take up space in my own life, to feel whole, without needing someone else to complete the picture. Work took a turn too. An unexpected offer from a branch overseas landed in my inbox. It felt crazy at first. New country, new job, new everything. But the old version of me would have hesitated. This version? She said yes. And just like that, I packed a different suitcase, one not filled with disappointment or heartbreak, but with plans, possibilities. I landed in a place where no one knew my story, and I got to write a new one from scratch. One where I was the main character again. Meanwhile, Daniel started texting. First, it was short. Can we talk? Then longer. I miss you. I made a mistake. He even sent pictures of our old couch, of my favorite mug, of the front porch I used to sit on with a blanket and tea. But every message came in like a pebble thrown at a closed window. I saw them. I read them. And then I let them sit. Because sometimes the strongest response is the one that doesn't need to say a word. One night, months later, I stood on a balcony overlooking a new skyline. Unfamiliar buildings, foreign sounds, a life that felt like mine for the first time in years. I had just finished a long day of work, the kind that leaves you exhausted but proud. I was sipping wine, not out of celebration or sadness, just presence. And my phone lit up again. Daniel. Another message. I didn't even flinch. I just watched the screen fade back to black. There was nothing left to say. Not anymore. He had crafted a weekend out of lies, wrapped in wine and soft music, thinking it was harmless, thinking I'd never know. But betrayal has a funny way of unlocking truth. I thought I was heading on a simple trip, just a few days away. Instead, life rerouted me. Not because I was lost, but because I was finally ready to be found. Not by him, not by anyone else, by myself. And as I leaned into the night air, city lights flickering below, I felt it. Not revenge, not regret. Just freedom. Real, quiet, earned freedom. He gave me one final gift, though he'll never realize it. By planning a lie, he cleared the path to my truth. I didn't just survive him, I outgrew him. And that right there was the twisted ending he never saw coming.